Hi all, welcome and welcome back to my channel. In this video I want to continue my discussion about the mind games I believe Chris Watts played before and after he murdered his entire family. In the first part of this video series, I shared some of the mind games that I felt Chris Watts played leading up to the disappearances of his pregnant wife and two little girls. I also discussed some of his deceptive behavior and mind games I caught in his interviews. I left off with the second interview conducted on his driveway, and I thought I did a pretty thorough job, but my viewers, man, they commented with so much that I forgot. Y'all are too smart. Maybe you should have done the video I was looking for. Then I wouldn't be doing a second one because I can't organize my thoughts and I talk too much. I apologize for taking so long to get this follow-up video to you, but my computer died after I did part one and I'm just getting back into making videos again. So if you notice a sound difference on this video, it's because my mic stopped working and I'm recording on my son's computer, and he's a gamer. So there are multiple screens and keyboards and mics and programs. It's like trying to record a YouTube video from the control center at NASA, and you're afraid to touch anything for fear of launching something you shouldn't. Okay, so back to the interview on Chris's driveway. I want to go back here because one of his best mind games takes place in this interview, in my opinion. And you may feel that the things I'm going to say next are just coincidence, that I'm reading too much into things, and that they weren't how they seem to be. And you're entitled to feel that way, but I don't believe in coincidence. And after knowing what Chris Watts did to his family, I find it hard to believe that you could think nothing of his emotionless interviews. If you have an ounce of empathy within you for other human beings, you could not have done what he did and carry on with no emotion, or even at times smiling and laughing. His choice of words and body language said everything he couldn't, because he wanted to, but he wouldn't. I got my sister to watch the interviews to see what I saw, and her mind was blown. She asked me if I saw all that, then why didn't the detectives? You may be wondering the same thing. They did see it, and I guarantee you, they saw a hell of a lot more than I did. Those two driveway interviews were a godsend for detectives. They knew they had their man before they even asked him to come in for questioning or to take the polygraph test. How do I know? Because of the mind games that started between the detectives and Chris the moment they sat down together. But I'll get to that. Let's go back to his driveway interview. He starts talking about how it's been since his family's been gone. He says when he got home, it was just vanished. It. He refers to his family as it. It was like a ghost town, he said, because he murdered her in the house. He describes his experience as earth-shattering, as in he shattered the earth when he dug the hole that he put his murdered wife in. Interesting, the words he chooses, isn't it? Think he's not that smart? Need I remind you that the detectives found that Chris had defecated on the ground next to the grave he dug for his murdered wife and child? Don't underestimate him. Then he explains that Bella was going to start school the following Monday. And again, he has to smash his lips together to keep from smiling because he knows she won't be. See, the joke's on everybody else because he already took care of it. We learned from the prosecutor during his sentencing that he called the school the day after the murders to let them know that the children wouldn't be returning. We also learned that he called his realtor as well, to sell the house since he wouldn't need such a big place anymore with his family dead and all. He was always 10 steps ahead of everyone the whole time, ready to move on with his new life with Nicole, and here we were, still worried about finding his family. He found it comical that we were so dumb. He remained very calm and emotionless as he maintained defensive position while telling the interviewer that he doesn't want to put anything out there like someone pulled in the back because there are no cameras back there, even though there is a driveway. Maybe how his girlfriend Nicole came and went? Nah, even I think I'm reaching with that one. And because Chris never disappoints, he goes on to give me two favorite parts in this video. The first one, he says it's really hard to suspect how Shanann may have left, or if somebody came and picked her up, and just as he says somebody came and picked her up, he reaches up and brushes his face, as if to say, like me. And the second, he's talking about what a great job the police are doing, and gosh, he sure hopes the investigation goes in a direction that will lead them to where they are. Then he reaches up and pats the top of his head because he already knows. I love it. Unless, of course, you know someone who randomly pats the top of their head in the middle of a sentence. Then, I don't know what to tell you. Man, Chris never disappoints. Anybody out there keeping score by chance? I should have done that. Oh well. If you're baffled by how much I saw while watching these interviews, imagine being in the room with the FBI's body language experts while they watched. Boy, I would have killed to be a fly on the wall in that room. They had to be chomping at the bit. You know they were. He handed them their number one suspect through those 2 interviews, which, ironically, Shanann's mom advised him against doing, because she didn't want him to be suspected of anything. You know, because he's such a great guy. At least she thought he was. They had him at this point, but they didn't know where the bodies were, so they needed him. And since we all know that you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar, they needed to befriend him so they could gain his trust. They needed him to think that they believed him and wanted to help him. So they brought in CBI agents Tammy Lee and Graham Coder, who were brilliant, by the way. Fresh faces there to side with him and help him. Fresh meat from Chris's perspective. Think he didn't know why they were brought in? Think they didn't know what they were up against? I know. Such a judgmental bitch. I won't cover the squad room interview and lie detector test in this video, or I'll never get to the jailhouse interview. But it's online if you want to watch it. Tons of mind games from both sides. It was beautiful. From Tammy acting like she's just trying to clear Chris's name so they can move on with the investigation, to her laughing and joking with him so he thinks she's building rapport when she knows it's impossible because he's not human. But man, did she do it like a boss. Hours with him alone, knowing he was a killer, and she never flinched. And man, were the mind games good. Okay, you talked me into it. But I won't cover it in depth, just the high points. Chris wants so much for the CBI to believe that he just couldn't hurt a fly, that he explains the argument Shanann had with his parents over the nuts left out at their house while Cece was there. He said he was hurt that Shanann wouldn't let the girls go back to his parents' house again. He said he wanted to take them to see his parents when he got to North Carolina, but he respected Shanann's decision to not let him. I guess what Shanann said went, huh? Aw, poor, sweet, submissive Chris. He never gets his way. Now, I need to take a moment to clarify my use of the terms dominant and submissive within this context. When I use these terms, I'm referring to the behavior of the mind, not the body. I feel the need to clarify this, as a viewer on my last video somehow inferred that I was doing an audiobook reading for the next installment of 50 Shades of Grey series, which I was not. He's lucky I love him, so I forgave him. But that won't change regardless of how he interprets this video either. Why? Because I'm such a great girl. Like how I did that? Okay, back to Chris. So Tammy asks him the different ways you can murder someone, so he'll understand the question when she asks him if he murdered his family on the lie detector test. He responds that you can shoot someone, stab someone, hit them with a blunt object, and then, he just can't think of anything else. So Tammy helps him out while drawing first blood by saying, you could smother someone or strangle someone. He says, yeah, but it's hard to think about that right now. Because that's how he killed his family. Then, understanding what Tammy just did, he adds, you could lure someone into a trap by waiting around the corner, You could torture them. The exact thing we wondered if he did to Shanann when she arrived home from the airport. Oh man, game on. Tammy then asks him if they find his family has been murdered, what does he think should happen to the person who killed them? She was looking for an angry reaction from him. The thought that someone killed his family should have sent him into a rage, but it didn't, because he knew she was referring to him. So instead, he responds in a sad voice, because he can only think of himself, and says, the worst possible thing. Then his voice clears and he says to her, it's either going to be a life sentence or the death penalty, isn't it? I mean, those are the only 2 things you really can do. Those are the only 2 penalties you have, he says. Okay, I have to interpret that just for fun. I know. I ain't right on any level. Ready? You don't scare me, bitch. Remember, at this point, he thinks he's got this. God, it was good. And he was just so sweet and needy the entire time. Then Tammy gives him the polygraph, and they leave him alone. He knows there's a camera in the room aimed at him, and he knows they've been recording the audio in the room the entire time. So he picks up his phone and starts watching videos of his kids. You can hear Bella and Cece's names being said as he watches, unfazed and completely emotionless. He didn't even care. Then Tammy and Graham both enter the room to inform him that he failed the polygraph test. They're going to tag team him now. And just as if Graham's and my brain are one, he says to him, we just can't figure out how there are two Chris's. Now, in all fairness, if you need to apply 50 Shades of Grey to any part of this video, insert here. Because how hot is it that they needed to tag team him because he was so good? From Chris's perspective, I mean, not mine. So they start their game of good cop, bad cop, confronting him about the polygraph test and telling him he just needs to come clean about what happened to his family. And he sticks to his story. He has no idea. But he does offer an explanation for failing the polygraph. He tells them he failed because he cheated on Shanann and he lied to them about it. Good save, Chris. Chris 2, detectives 0. Except, now it's Graham's turn to draw blood. And he informs Chris that they already knew about Nicole and the affair. That's why they didn't ask him any questions about it. Ouch. Oh no, Chris didn't think of that. Now he needs another way out, but he doesn't have one. He's not going to come clean, and they still need the bodies. Awkward silence. So they ask him why they haven't seen him cry at all about his family, his little girls. And he musters up a sad voice and tries to fake some tears while he tells them that he is sad. You know, if it'll make him happy. Then they decide to tell Chris that they know he's a great guy and he would never intentionally hurt his family. So it must have been some sort of accident. Brilliant. I know you're going, where the hell is she going with this? But think about it. They knew there was no accident. They already knew about the affair, and he could barely contain his happiness that his family was gone in the interviews. He was so proud of himself for figuring it all out and finally getting his way. And they insult him by calling his brilliant plan an accident? Damn, that had to hurt. Hell, they made me want to slap him. Poor guy finally steps up and dominates his life situation, and he can't even get credit for it. No, he's not having that. But he knows they need the bodies, so he'll let them keep trying. Accident is a no-go. Then they suggest maybe an argument, a heat of passion type thing. He didn't say anything, so I'll answer for Chris. Nah, I'll pass. Next, Tammy suggests that maybe he's covering for Shanann because he loved her so much and he didn't want the world to know that she murdered her children. Wow. Bingo. We have a winner. Sounds good. He doesn't get full credit for his work, but he gets partial credit for murdering Shanann after she murdered the children. He'll take it. And who wouldn't understand that? Husband flies into rage and murders wife after she murders his children. Not only would he probably get little to no time, but he would be a hero in the eyes of many. Brilliant. They'll split the difference. And we all remember it, don't we? When it was all over national news that Chris said Shanann killed the kids. Yeah, he saw her do it on the baby monitor. He saw Shanann choking their daughter until she turned blue. That poor guy, having to witness that, it must have been pure hell. To have to watch your wife while she chokes your child until she turns blue, and you can't do a thing to stop her, even though there's nothing stopping you. And gosh, he panicked after it happened, because he couldn't believe it. His babies were dead, and he killed his wife. He was so devastated he didn't know what to do, and it never occurred to him to call 911. He sounded so sad while he confessed to Tammy and Graham. It certainly wasn't what he wanted to happen, but it happened all the same. He's so sorry. So sorry. Poor Chris. They got him. Now he can tell them where his family is. Now that they know the truth about what happened, they win. Or do they? He only gets credit for killing Shanann, not the girls, whatever. But now he gets the endless pleasure of slandering her name to the entire world as payback for ruining his happy ending with Nicole. Not to mention the torture her family and friends would go through, knowing there was no way she hurt those kids. But that was just a bonus. And who was going to stop him? Nah, he wins. He wins all the way around. Remember, this was the story that Chris went with, and the story that was broadcast to the world. The only reason Chris ended up admitting that he killed them was to get the death penalty off the table. If prosecutors never discussed pursuing a death sentence, Chris may have never admitted to the crimes at all. But he was afraid of dying. Funny, huh? He had no problem taking the lives of his family, but he feared dying himself. So he confessed to all the murders in exchange for life sentences. Because by then he knew they already had him figured out. No matter how convincing he thought his story about Shanann killing the girls was, his story about how he disposed of their bodies because he panicked wasn't going to fly. But he didn't know that in the beginning. He didn't know that they already knew about his girlfriend and his affair, and that they evaluated his interviews and already knew the truth. He thought he would get away with it all, and the bodies would never be discovered. Now, I promised you in the first video that I would tell you what I think happened between Chris Watts and Sherlyn Cadle, the author of the book about the case titled Letters from Christopher. For those of you who are not familiar with Sherlyn Cadle, she says she was just a grandmother who was familiar with the Chris Watts case and thought it would be interesting to write a book about what happened. She said she wrote to him and asked him if she could write the book, and he said yes. This was her first book, and she felt she wanted to get the story out. That's great. I think she had the best of intentions and really thought maybe they could help each other. She could be Chris's friend, and he could help her write a bestseller. Sounds easy enough, right? She said she told him in her very first letter that she thought his crimes were heinous, and he agreed to let her write the book about his forgiveness. You know, because he's found God. So Sherlyn, having no idea what she's in for, goes to visit Chris. She said she felt safe at the prison because Chris was surrounded by armed guards, and he wasn't allowed to move or get up while she was present. So she wasn't very concerned about anything. I love it. Don't get me wrong. I feel bad for her. But physical damage was never what she needed to be concerned about. It was the mental and psychological damage that she would endure that would do her in. And I agree, the way he did it was so subtle that she didn't even realize it was happening at first. Much like his word choices and subtle body language that I described above. See, he set her up. He told her that he found God and he was seeking forgiveness for his sins. He was reading the Bible and quoting scripture to her. She probably thought he really wanted to turn his life around, and she wanted to help. You can't blame her for that. She didn't know that he just said yes to her because she was the next perfect victim. A sweet grandmother looking to write a book about forgiveness. Precious. Slam dunk, actually. She wouldn't come prepared for him. She had no idea. Now Sherlyn has shared some of the disturbing things that happened during her visit with Chris and things that he said to her. You can find them all online. She called him a narcissist and said that every conversation was about him, not his family. She described his eyes as cold and empty with nothing behind them. She suggested a feeling about him that he didn't even have a soul. She said he exhibited very few facial expressions at all and zero emotion. And when she could get him to talk about the murders, she said his eyes would go dark. She described it as eerie and unsettling. It bothered her, and he sensed it. He told her he always knew he would do something to his family. He blamed the murders on Nicole and the demon inside of him. He said that when he strangled Shanann, he couldn't stop. It was as if another set of hands were holding his on her neck, and he couldn't let go. He used Bible verses to put Sherlyn at ease and then turned them into something horrible and wrong. He talked about love in the Bible and then continued on to say how he feared Shanann and didn't understand how he could fear someone he loved. But the fear and submissiveness became too much and turned into careful, fearful planning with every step he took. He equated his love for Shanann to fear and fear to torment. He described his life like he was enduring a nightmare. Dark, darker, darkest. Sherlyn wasn't ready for that. That wasn't what she saw in Shanann's videos. But boy, was it what Chris was putting in her mind. That and a whole lot of other psychological mind games that she probably still hasn't figured out today. That woman walked into that prison a beam of light and left shrouded in darkness. How do I know? Because I've been there, in a prison with armed guards, sitting face to face with a narcissist. And I told you in a previous video that I had already developed the armor I needed to deal with it. But armor doesn't protect you from everything, and a whole lot still seeps in. Sherlyn had no armor. She didn't know what I knew, and she had no idea she was in any sort of danger. So, I can only imagine the psychological abuse she endured at Chris's hands. Sure, he gave her some information for her book, but what she gave him in return was so much more valuable to him. I guaranteed he got her to talk about her life and her family. I bet she even shared personal information with him because she didn't know better. And then he used it to get into her head. I don't need her to tell me that she never felt the same after talking with Chris. I already know. Why do I think she plagiarized another author to finish her book? Because she couldn't take it anymore, and she had a deadline to meet. What started out as Chris's stories for her book turned into Sherlyn's stories for Chris. He got to her, and she had to get out. The darkness was just too heavy, and it wasn't leaving her. She didn't understand what was happening to her, and she got desperate. She promised her book to the world, and she needed to produce it. I guarantee the fear she felt for that man was palpable. So she did what she needed to do to save herself. But she didn't talk about it publicly, did she? No, because you can't. No one will ever believe you. Hell, you barely believe it yourself. She did reveal one tiny tidbit of a conversation that she had with Chris, though. Just enough to give us a glimpse of what she went through. What did she say? Chris asked her, if he wasn't in prison, would she let him babysit her 3-year-old grandchild? It was a test for Sherlyn, and I'm sure that was just the beginning. Man, now I'm going to have to make a third video to cover the prison interview. Who am I kidding? It'll be like the 10th video. But this is good stuff. And I got excellent feedback from viewers on my last video, so I think we needed this. I hope you stick with me through this. I love your input in the comments, and it's doing me a world of good to get it all out. Thank you so much for watching. You're the best. And I'll see you on my next video.